In this video, I'm going to show you how to install a PoE camera system, and what PoE stands for is Power over Ethernet. So the camera is going to be powered and it's going to be transmitting its data using a cable, but just one single cable. You don't have to run one for power and another one for the data. It's all just in one wire. And wireless is what I had in my old house. And it was something that I always worried about getting hacked, because whenever you have something running over Wi-Fi, it's going to be way less secure than something that's hardwired like this camera system I'm going to show you how to install today. In order to get the most out of your home security cameras, the most important thing is something that's really important to real estate also, and that's location, location, location. In order to get the most out of your cameras, you need to observe any weak potential areas in which a burglar or someone of that nature can penetrate through into the house. So windows and doors are the big one that you need to make sure you have covered. And also you want to make sure there's no blind spots in your camera views in which somebody can get around without being seen. So in my opinion, that's the best way to place your cameras, and you want to make sure they're up out of reach so someone just can't come up to the camera and put their hand over it or a towel or something like that and still get away with whatever they're trying to do. So right here is a simple drawing of a house, a simple square house, and right here are windows, a door, and windows. So, and anybody can agree that you want to make sure that you cover those areas. So if you put a camera up in each corner, that's going to be a great place to start, because that way you can have one camera angled this way, the next camera is going to be angled this way, the next one this way, and then the next one angled this way. And if you're wondering, this is the viewing angle. And so that way each corner of your house is covered and will be seen. But obviously if you have a house that's not a perfect rectangle and you have places where, let's say, a porch is recessed into the house, you're going to want to place a camera on that recessed porch, which that's what I'll be doing in this install video. And let's take a look at this back deck here. That's another great place to put a camera. So right here you can view your whole back porch. And let's say you have an outbuilding, let's say it's located over here, you could also put a camera here to look that way as well. So each house is going to be totally different than the next, but that's just a good rough diagram of what you want to do, is just make sure you don't have any blind spots in the perimeter around your house. I'm now going to unbox my security camera system, and this security camera system is made by ONWOTE, and they actually sent me this system for free to review, so I wanted to say thank you to them for that. And also I'll put a link in the description below if you want to check this system out. And it has 4K, it's AI detection, it'll detect humans using AI, which is really cool, and it's PoE, Power over Ethernet, and it has an NVR recorder, so it's going to have a network video recorder, so that way you don't have to rely on the Wi-Fi like we talked about earlier. So let's go ahead and open this box. First thing we got is the user's guide, and if we take a look, looks like we got probably the NVR recorder here, so I'm going to show you that in detail. And now inside the box, I got 8 of these square boxes, so I definitely know those are the cameras. And I also got 8 rolls of this 60-foot Cat 6 cable, so these are what's going to be the Ethernet cables that are going to power the cameras. So let me show you all this stuff up close. All right, so this is up close of everything in the box. Like I said, Ethernet cables, the cameras, and the NVR. So let's first open up the NVR. This is the recorder, like I said. So if we take a look, everything was packaged really well and nothing seems to be damaged. All right, the NVR looks to be in good shape, and that's what it looks like. And this is where all the Ethernet cables plug into. And also in the box, I almost left a few parts in there. Looks like it came with a mouse. So you got to plug a mouse into this to operate it. And it looks like we got our power cord here. So that's going to be what powers the NVR. It looks like we got some kind of mounting tape. And it looks like we got a Ethernet cable to connect to our router. And now we'll open up one of the cameras. I'll show you what those look like. So if we just pop open this cardboard box, looks like the packaging is very snug in here, so they shouldn't be damaged. Looks good. All right, so we open up the camera. Looks like it is covered in some plastic. And right here's the lens. And back here are the two different connections. And I'm going to look into this a little further, but if I am thinking properly here, I think this is for the PoE, and then this is for another option to power it. So in this case, we're just going to have to use this connector here for this install. And we got some more accessories for the install to make the connections here on the ends. And we got some, looks like drywall anchors and screws, which I got all my own stuff, so I probably won't be using these, but maybe. So let's go ahead and put this one back in the box. But I just want to show you what came in the camera box. All right, and as far as the Ethernet cable goes, this is actually Cat 5. So it says Cat 5e on it. I thought it was Cat 6, but it's actually Cat 5. So that's good to note too. All right, so we got everything here ready to go. So let's start installing this stuff. Before I begin running my Ethernet cables to each camera, I first need to know where I'm going to place everything. So if you take a look back here, I put 2 shelves in this utility closet. This is going to be a place for the mouse for the NVR, and this is going to be where the NVR sits. And I actually put a grommet in this shelf, so I have 2 power outlets here to plug into. And then I got a place for my HDMI cables and everything to go up to the TV and to the mouse, and it's going to work out great. So what I need to do is make sure I get my Ethernet cables back here to the NVR. So in order to do so, I'm going to cut out a section of this drywall to give me a place to run my Ethernet cables through, and I'm going to go down through this stud space on this wall. So I'm first going to cut out a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 square. That's going to be for my cover that's going to allow the Ethernet cables to come through. I know there is a stud right here, and then there's a stud back here. So I want my Ethernet cables to come out right here. So if I take a measurement, it's 4 1/2 from the outside of that trim cover that I ordered. So I know it's going to fit right in there comfortably. So in order to do this, I'm just going to go ahead and just come off this shelf just a little bit for my height measurement. And then I'm going to measure up 4 1/4 from there. So now I'm just going to take my little speed square and come back here and mark right at 4 1/4, and then come over here, mark 4 1/4. Now I'm going to draw a straight line. Sorry, it's such a tight spot to work and try to film at the same time. And I'm now going to square up to those marks. So now I need to cut this section out. And to make this easier, I'm going to remove these shelves and get them out of the way for now. I'm now going to take this oscillating tool to just plunge cut and cut that box out. Now I'm just going to remove that piece of drywall. And now we got a place to bring our Ethernet cables down through, and we can just cover that right up. I got slightly unlucky and lucky in this case. As you can see, there's a stud here that I wasn't planning on hitting, and that's because there was a wall intersecting here I didn't realize coming into this wall. So as you can see, I anchored these boards here using this stud, but because of the wall there was one here, so I didn't really want that. But the positive is there's a cavity here to where this wall intersects, so we got wood in the back and we got wood here and a stud here. So once we locate this area up above, the Ethernet cables will follow that and come out right here. So that's very good. Now that I got the hole cut out in the drywall, I now got to go above in the attic. And if you don't feel comfortable running the wires up in an attic, I understand. I would just hire that part out, but I don't mind doing it. I work construction, so it's easy for me. But what I got to do is take this stuff that you see here up in the attic with me. Then I'm going to have my helper get a hold of this string after I fish the fish tape down from above, and then pull up the string, and then we're going to pull down the Ethernet cables through the wall. So I got my drill to drill the hole in the top of the wall. I got the fish tape like I just explained. I got some foam fill, and this is to help as a fire stop and fill the hole once the Ethernet cables come through it. And then I got the Ethernet cables that came with the system. And then I did buy these separate. These are 150 foot because on the other side of my house is a long run. I don't need the whole 150 foot, but it was just as cheap to get this as the smaller ones. So these will be in the links in the description below if you want to get the longer cables. So now that I got everything ready, I'm going to go upstairs and get started, or up in the attic and get started. I'm now up here in my attic, And if you take a look, those are the black RG6 cables. That's for my coax. If we take a look over here, there's a wall. That's going to be where it intersects like we've seen below. So I got to drill a hole right in that area to enter into the stud space that we cut out for earlier. And take a look, I had to dig this insulation out. And right here are the ends of the 150-foot rolls. They're running straight across the attic, and it ends back there to where I'm going to have to put cameras. And then I got my other supplies in this bag. And now I'm going to unbox these Ethernet cables and then drill this hole and get them all down through here. The first step was drilling the hole down through the center of the wall. And then once I got through, I took my fish tape and fished it right down through the hole. And I know the hole looks a little bigger than it should, but if you see what I'm getting ready to do, you're going to understand why. And then I had my helper grab the end of the fish tape from below where the NVR is going to set. And then he's going to hook a piece of nylon string to it. And then I'm just going to pull that fish tape right back up through the stud space. And then once I get it pulled up through, I'm going to take the end of this nylon rope and tie it to the ends of the Ethernet cable. So after I tie it on securely, my helper is going to take the end of that nylon rope and pull it right down through that hole we drilled. And this, as you can see, is why the hole's so big, because the end of those Ethernet cables are relatively bulky. And then once we get down through the hole, my helper is going to keep pulling until the Ethernet cable comes through the hole we cut out in the drywall. And this might be hard to do if there's insulation in the way like there is here, but with a little bit of effort, it's not too bad. And then once my helper grabs the ends, he's going to help finagle it right down through the wall. And you're going to make a mess doing this, as you can see, but with a little bit of vacuum work, you can finish it up nice. And now I'm going to take that foam fill that's mainly for the fire blocking and insulation, and then we're going to fill that up, and it's actually going to help secure those Ethernet cables from falling back down through the wall. And then I'm going to cover up everything I did with the insulation that's up in the attic. Now that I got the cables ran in the attic, I'm going to go down below in the crawl space, and I got 5 of these 250-foot rolls of the Cat 6 Ethernet cable, and these are going to supply my garage when I build that here soon, and there's going to be a lot of videos on that, so stay tuned. But it's the same principle, other than we're going to be down in the crawl space. The main difference when you're running the cable up through the wall is that you're going to be fighting gravity, so I just drilled a hole out using a smaller drill bit but multiple holes. Then I ran the fish tape up into the stud space. Then my helper did the same thing like we did from above. He just grabbed the end of the fish tape, and it was a little tougher to get it up through this time around, but once we got through, he just hooked the nylon rope to the end of it just like we did from above. And then once he gets it hooked, I'm going to pull it right back down through the wall, and then I'm going to grab the end and hook the Ethernet cable right to it. And then we're going to reverse the process, and he's going to pull plenty of length to be able to plug it into the NVR. And then I'm just going to take the foam and fill in around the cables just like we did from up above. I'm now up here where I want to install one of the cameras, and I'm sorry if there's a little wind noise, it's a little breezy right now. But I want the camera to sit here so I can position it to look this way, or I can position it to look this way if I ever change my mind in the future. So I got a 3/4 inch drill bit, and a 1/2 inch drill bit would probably be fine. But in this case, this is what I have and what I'm going to use. And I'm going to center it right here, like I said, so I can have options. And if you're curious to see the anatomy of the inside of this soffit, I'll put a video in the top right hand corner of the screen where you can see me installing this exact soffit. So now I'm going to go ahead and drill out this hole. All right, I punched a hole through there pretty easy. Now I got to get my fish tape to go up inside of here. I now got my fish tape, and I unspooled a little bit of it so I have plenty to go. So what I'm going to do is go through this hole and try to go up in between the trusses on this side, because there's an open spot right there. So I'm going to take it and do that, and I'll put a link to this in the description below if you want to buy one. All right, I feel like I failed to go up in there, so I'm going to go up in the attic and check and see if it's in there. As you can see, the fish tape came right up through this space between the outside and this truss. And now I'm going to take this end and hook it to the end of my cable that I ran down below to where the NVR is going to be. So this is the other end of it. And now I'm going to hook them. Now that I got the fish tape hooked to the Ethernet cable, I'm going to go back down below on top of the step ladder and pull it through. All right, now that we're hooked to the Ethernet cable, I'm just going to pull it through. All right, looks like we got it through. So that was the hard part. And now that it's through, all we got to do is hook the camera to it. And I'm going to show you how to do that next. All right, so what I got here is a number 2 Phillips bit on an impact driver or a drill. I got some caulk here and I got the camera. So the first thing I need to do is remove that cover off the housing of the camera, and it just simply twists and come right off. And now on this end, you don't have the ability to hook the waterproof housing to this because it's too big in diameter on the end of this aftermarket cable. So I will warn you about that ahead of time, but these parts will not be able to be used, but you may find another way to waterproof it. But since I'm up under this overhang, I don't have to worry about it. So all I gotta do is simply just plug this in and the connection's made. And that's as far as I can go with it here. And then I just fish it right back up into the soffit like so. Now I'm going to position my camera where I want it roughly. So it looks like about right there is good. And now I'm going to take one of the number 2 Phillips screws that came with the cameras and drive it up into one of these portholes to get it hanging on at first. And I'm just going to put it in enough so it hangs. And then I'm going to take my caulking and caulk around that hole so it has a little more of a seal so insects can't crawl up into the attic. And I usually put a good bit because when you push this up in here, the cable's going to drag some of that up with it, because if you put a light amount, it won't be enough to seal the hole. So pretty good glob on it like that. Now I'm going to finish driving the first screw that I have placed in it and install a screw in this hole, and there's one on the other side of the camera. Hold it into place, and I'm screwing right into the vinyl soffit and it holds it just fine. All right, so the camera's secure there, and then I'm going to take the cover and place back onto the camera. I always try to keep the logo facing towards where the lens is. It's just my little take on it, and then twist it on, and now we're sitting there securely. And then after we turn the camera on, we're going to position the eye exactly where we want it. I use the same method to install this camera, this camera, this camera, this camera, this camera, and this camera. Because it's going to be easier to show you this here on the ground than it is up in the air on a step ladder, when you get up here and you got your cameras installed, the first thing I'm going to do is shut this cap on the end of this one, because it's not going to really be usable with these installs because the power is going over this, so you don't really need that for this. And this is going to plug right into here ultimately, but before I do that, I'm going to take this piece. This is like a water sealing kit to keep the weather out of the connection, and this is 3 screws and then these drywall anchor looking things. And I only use these screws when I'm up in the soffit for my install, but I just really wanted to show you how this goes together. All we got to do is take this and slide right over the end of the Ethernet cable, and then we'll take this rubber bushing, and this is going to just go right over the cable like so. And then what we're going to do is take this rubber seal, and I'm going to slide it right over the end of this like that. And then we are simply going to take this and fish right over the Ethernet cable as well. And now I'm going to fish this rubber over this sleeve. Well, actually it's going to go inside of it, as you can see, like that. And before we tighten that down all the way, this is just going to clip into place. So you heard it snap right together. And then we're going to push this down all the way. And then we're going to twist it and lock it tight, and that rubber seal makes a weather tight seal. And then up here on this connection, we're just going to tighten this down all the way. And as you can see, that rubber is pushing out over the cable to keep the weather out of it. So right like that. So that's how you make that connection. But the aftermarket cables I got will not work with this because they're too big on the ends, but since I'm up under the soffit, it doesn't matter in my case. But if you're out in the weather, you'll have to find a way to weather seal the aftermarket ones. But with the cables that came with it, it works out just fine. I went ahead and placed the TV up here onto the wall, and I also ran the power and the HDMI cable up to the TV so it's all ready to go. And also, I'm going to work on placing the trim kit around all of these Ethernet cables now. I'm first going to take this black plastic piece that came with the trim kit and fish all the Ethernet cables over the trim kit. I'm now going to snug up the drywall anchors on the trim kit. And now, because down here the stud was in the way, I'm just going to place a screw right into that screw hole. I'm going to separate these. These that are coming up from the floor are going to go on one side, then these coming down from the ceiling are going to go on another. So I'm going to take the piece that looks like this that came with the trim kit, and it's just going to slide with these cables going right through the middle of it. And I'm now going to do the same to this side. And now I'm going to fish this cover over each side as well. I'm now going to take the little white Phillips screws that came in the kit and secure this right to that black outlet. Going through this hole and then right into that hole. Now I'm going to take these silver screws and install them right through the white cover. And as you can see, that looks much better than just a rough hole. I'm now going to place this bottom shelf on the brackets. And now I'm going to go ahead and place my router modem right on top of everything. Now I'm going to run my power cord up to my modem. This has nothing to do with the security system. This is my personal cable for another device. I'm now going to run the HDMI cable that's coming out of the TV and the power cord right back into this hole. I now got the mouse that was supplied with the device for the NVR, and I'm going to fish it in the back hole, along with the power cord and the Ethernet cable that's going to be for the network. And the power cord for the NVR and for the TV are going to get plugged back in this grommet. So now I'm just going to plug this into my router modem as well. So now I simply got to plug all this stuff in the back of the NVR. So if you take a look at the back of the NVR, there's ports for everything. This is for the cameras. This port is for the HDMI going to the TV. This is for the mouse. And then this is going to the network to run over the modem router. Now I'm simply going to plug everything into these ports. Now these are going over to my for the garage cameras later, so we ain't going to hook these up yet. We're just going to save those for later. And now I'm going to hook everything else up. I'm just going to let these lay to the side for now, and I'll hook those up when I get the garage built. And now all I gotta do is reach in the back and turn the power switch on. And I'm also gonna power the TV on. You'll get this logo when it turns on. All right, as you can see, there's power going over to the cameras. And now we're going to go through and do the setup. I'm just going to use the mouse to control the cursor up on the screen. And we're going to go with English. Enter password. There's a generic one that said in the owner manual. So now we got to change the password initially. All right, I changed the password that it wanted me to do initially, and it wants me to draw this pattern, but I'm going to skip that for now. I'll do that later. And time zone, I'm just put in your time zone here, obviously. All right, I've been using these cameras for several days, so I just want to give you a review on it and a little bit on how it functions. So I'm going to go just to my back porch here, and if you just click the frame, it's going to pull up this quick menu here, so you can turn the audio on to listen to what's going on. And you can just hear a little bit of noise because there's not much noise outside right now. But that's an easy, quick way to listen to the audio. And then you can go through here, instant playback, digital zoom. So if you want to just zoom in somewhere, just take it and pull in the frame, release. and it's going to take you right up close to it. And then to exit, I'm going to right click the mouse, and then I'm going to go back, and you can see the little speaker sign here showing that the audio is on. And if there was a two-way audio function on this camera, I could click that and talk through it, but there isn't, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off the audio for now. And let's say that you want to see the playback of the footage here. What I'm going to do is just right click it, and then it gives you several options here, right? And right here we can also go to different views. So if we want to just show 3 window, there's 3, which is kind of an awkward view. So if we wanted to go to, let's say, 8 windows, there's that. So you can see there's many options, but I'm just going to go to 16 windows just for the sake of simplicity. So if we take a look, let's right click and hit playback. So it's automatically going to show you the playback options here as far as the timeline goes. If you take a look at the calendar, as you can see, I started the cameras up on the 17th and it's been 10 days now. And all these red marks mean that there was motion caught on those days. And then the blue marks mean there wasn't much activity. So let's go back to the 23rd, double click. You can see the whole 23rd was here, and then we got a red mark here showing there was some activity. As you can see, there was my dad walking through the yard, and that red square is a sign that a human was detected using the AI technology. So with that being said, it's important because it eliminates all the movement that wasn't a human or a vehicle or anything of that nature, so it wouldn't pick up just wind blowing the leaves or anything like that. So that's one thing I really do appreciate about these cameras, is that the AI technology just gets rid of all that junk. And then as you can see, we can just skip around the timeline to take a look throughout the day wherever we want. And we can also download all the recordings to our computer for whatever reason if we need it. So as you can see, there's plenty of storage here. And I think it said it's estimated on this hard drive for how many cameras I got right now to record for up to like 17 or 20 days, something like that. So there's plenty of storage. But once I get my garage cameras in, it's going to cut the estimated storage time down probably to about 10 days or so, which is plenty because realistically you only need to go back a handful of days for most people. So, all right, that's a quick show of the interface here. And now I want to show you the app. I'm now going to pull up the Guard Station app on my phone. So if we open it up, it's going to take me to the last camera that I had opened. But if I click images, I can move up to however many cameras I got. So if we had 16, you can see you can pull all 16 up at once. But I'm going to pull up 9 so I can pull up all the ones I have connected at this time. So I'm going to tap the back porch like I showed you earlier. And it's going to highlight that camera. And then if we double tap, you can see it brings it up larger. And if we put our phone sideways, it's going to expand it like so. But I'm going to go back to the standard phone size here. And if we look, we can adjust the quality from high to low or vice versa. So we can go across like that. We can tap record and it'll start recording right now while we're watching it. If we notice something suspicious, we can easily tap it to start recording. And if we untap it, it says it was saved successfully. But just so you know, it's recording all the time on the NVR. So let's say you wanted to go check out all the recording on the NVR. We just tap playback and it's going to take us back. All this blue is recorded footage. So if we take a look, we can search back on all the different dates here. Again, let's say we want to go back to, let's say the 17th. So we take it back 17th, tap OK. This is going to be that whole day before it started recording. So as you can see, it started recording back here at this time, and it wasn't having any footage here because right there it was not connected. But if we skip through, there is all kinds of footage you can clip through. And if you wanted to adjust the date, you can easily do that. And if you keep scrolling through, if you look at it up close, if you zoom in onto the timeline, it's going to pull the camera up or put the footage up into each one of these lines, which was some kind of activity that was spotted. You can just scroll through and easily look at all your footage. So if we want to go back to current time, we can hit live and it'll take us back to the live footage. So as you can see, very easy to use, and you can adjust different things like brightness, saturation, etc. And you can also do the device configuration here. This is where you can rename the device, all those types of things. And as far as alarms go, I haven't really messed with that setting. And now you can easily sift through all of your different cameras real simply, like so. So as you can see, it's a very easy device to use even on the phone. And if we come back here and tap this little hamburger up in the top right, you can check out all of your alarms. I actually have it turned off for now because I was getting all kinds of alarms. But if we do this and just take a look at some different alarms, let's just go to the front yard. All you gotta do is tap the little icon here, and there is some kind of moving vehicle that triggered the alarm, so that's where you would go to look at all of your alarm that were triggered. But I'm going to turn that off because you will get a lot of notifications if you're beside a road and any part of the camera is on the road. And now let's say we wanted to adjust the sensitivity in a certain location. All we do is go to configure, and let's say a certain part of the camera we didn't want to detect anything. We go to general detection, tap motion detection and detection area. And then right here, as you can see, you can adjust different areas to unblock or block. All you do is tap the different cells and it will adjust accordingly. And you can save that. And that is how you adjust all the settings in that screen. Okay, and so there you have it. That was just a straightforward, simple rundown of using the app to view your footage. Now that we got all the installation out of the way and I showed you guys how the interface works, how the app works, I'm going to give you my final conclusion and review of the system as a whole. Again, I haven't used it for a really long period of time, just as you can see, up to 10 days. But I'm going to give you my experience in those 10 days and what I really feel. So I'm first going to go over the pros. So the pros that I wanted to say was the biggest one for me was the AI technology of these cameras. It was great because it eliminated all the bunch of alerts that you would have got from another system that didn't have it, that was just the movement of wind or anything like a bush moving or a bird moving or something like that. So it eliminated a lot of alerts that were garbage, and I only got alerts on my phone that were true people or vehicles. So I will say I appreciate that. And every once in a while it would say a tree was a human, but it's just because it did look similar to a human, just the way the shadows hit, and then that alert would go away once the sun kept moving, but that didn't happen very often. Just wanted to say it did do that with that. So the second pro was the resolution of the cameras. They are 4K like I mentioned, and the resolution looked incredible. Now the TV that I had coming off the NVR that we're looking at was only a 720 monitor, but on my phone and anything else where I really zoomed in really tight, it looked really good still, even when I zoomed in fairly close. So the 4K is definitely a huge plus for resolution. So no complaints there. The next thing is when using the app, it was very streamlined and easy. There was no issues trying to figure out how the app worked, which was very helpful. I've used some apps with some Wi-Fi cameras in the past and they weren't nearly as intuitive as this one. So there's a big pro there for anybody that's new to camera systems. The mic picked up great on these cameras. I had my camera that was in the corner of the house and actually turned it on. I could hear people talking clear my driveway, which was like 60 feet away. So I will say the mics work excellent on these cameras. And sometimes they are a little bit too sensitive in a way to where if the wind's blowing, you can really hear it muffle the sound, but that's okay. I'd rather have a good mic that picks up more sound than not. So I give a big pro to the mic on this system. And the night vision worked good. It wasn't excellent by no means, but it worked good, but it was a pro because the night vision was actually useful. I noticed it works best when you don't have the camera looking towards the siding of the house and part of the yard, because just like most night vision, it's going to glare off the siding and you're not going to see what's out in the yard. But if you look at the night vision on my driveway, it picked up really well, and that's because there was no siding or anything or downspouts in the way to where it blocked out the rest of the image, so it wasn't overexposed on just one item. So the night vision worked good. Again, not great, but it worked really good. The next thing I would say that was a big plus that I noticed about these, the build quality of these cameras were actually really good. You could tell they were manufactured well. There wasn't any weird component that seemed to be weak. I would give the build quality a big plus. So that was my list of the pros with this camera system. Now it's time for some cons. So I'm going to say the biggest con to this system, which ain't just for only this system, is because of the type of system it is, the power over Ethernet. It is much harder to run than a Wi-Fi camera system, but with that being said, that's just the system, so it ain't really a con as far as this actual system. It's just all the PoE systems in general. They're going to be much more difficult to install compared to a Wi-Fi system. But the biggest benefit is your security of the system, because it's going to be more secure because it's not going over Wi-Fi. And also a big plus, he's got local storage, so you don't have to worry about storing into a cloud like a lot of the Wi-Fi cameras. So I will say that's one con, is the installation's a little bit of a pain. The next con with a system like this is you gotta have a monitor, like you seen my TV that I had installed, or if I didn't have a TV, I would have had to put a monitor there, something of that nature. That's a big drawback because that's an extra expense. And again, it ain't just for this camera brand or anything like that, but it's just the system in general. And one way you could get around it is just use the monitor for the setup, and whenever you got to access the NVR to set up your cameras or whatever, and then just take the monitor off and just replug it in when you need it. So it's a little bit of a drawback. I would consider that a con. The next con that I found, I could not view these cameras on my Mac without going through downloading software that I wasn't comfortable downloading, because the developer was unidentified and the Mac would not let me download the software to view the cameras that were recommended by ONWOTE. So I will say that was a big drawback. I was hoping I could pull it up on my computer and view my cameras with ease, but I do have the phone, which is no big deal because that is more important, so I can view my cameras mobilely. But that is a drawback, that it was so difficult, and so it didn't seem very safe to me downloading from an unidentified developer. So I will say that was a drawback for me, but most people would probably have no problem doing that and going around it. Now with a Windows computer, I don't know, I don't have Windows, I don't use Windows. So I will say that was another con for me, is not be able to view it on my Mac. The next con that is specific to this system that I noticed is the cables that were sent were only 60 feet. And a lot of houses will require longer than 60 feet to install all the cameras around the house. I feel like they should have been 100 feet long. I think most people could have easily installed almost all the cameras with 100 feet. In fact, the 150-foot rolls that I got to install the cameras on the other side of the house that you see me install, those I might have been able to get away with a 100-foot cable and not had to buy the extra cable. But that's, again, it's very unique to a house that you're doing. It might not be with every house. Every house is totally different. 60 feet might have been more than adequate for a lot of houses. But for me, that was one drawback. And as far as running the cables down below and going out to my garage later, that's totally unique to my situation. That's probably something that most people won't have to do. But for me, that's going to be the only drawback, is I wish I had longer Ethernet cables. So what are my final thoughts and conclusion with this system by ONWOTE? My conclusion is, for the price, I think it's going to be very hard to beat. I think for anything below $1,000, getting that many cameras is going to be extremely difficult to find with the quality that was given here, with the AI technology, the 4K, power over Ethernet. I had a 4 terabyte NVR with this. Very hard to beat for anything that's going to be under $1,000. And it seemed like everything worked really smooth. I didn't have any issues viewing any of the footage if I had to. So I'm going to say, for the value that you get, it's going to be pretty hard to beat. And given the fact that this is power over Ethernet and it's a very secure system, I think that's a big selling point with this camera system. Again, you can get those Wi-Fi cameras all day long for a very cheap price as well, but it's not going to be nearly as good for if you truly needed a good surveillance camera system. Now, with that being said, do most people only need Wi-Fi cameras? I'm going to say for a lot of situations, yes, Wi-Fi cameras are going to be sufficient for most people, but if you're serious about your home security, you definitely want to get a NVR system and a PoE system like I showed installing here, and this system definitely seemed to be a good one. So that's it for this video, and if you want to see additional videos from me, check out this playlist. It'll help you out.